Hi, Ben. Thank you so much for joining Her Father's Business podcast, all about what God is doing in your journey as we move in our faith. I really wanted to have you join us to hear a little bit about how God is working in the season of your life. But I just wanted to introduce you. Today we have Ben Avery. He's a storyteller, an author, podcaster, comic book writer, editor, pastor, and puppeteer.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Thank you so much for for joining us.
yeah. Thank you. I'm excited to just kind of talk with you about just life, what's going
Yeah,
on. Yeah.
exactly. So don't let me stop you.
Oh, I was going to say there's one more thing that I had now add to that list, and that is
Yeah,
screenwriter. I'm working actually on a movie right now. It's the first actual screenplay. Who knows if the movie will get go to completion because anything can happen during that whole long process. But right now, it's just a very fun time. I just got off a phone call with some of my collaborators, and um, yeah, so creatively speaking, this is a very fun time in my life because of just the things I'm doing at the church, things I'm doing on my laptop with the screenplay writing, and that kind of thing. So yeah.
that's fantastic. So are you able to tell us a little bit about? Are we getting like a exclusive
This is not
snippet?
exclusive. No, I have
Oh,
announced this. It's Facebook official, as they say.
okay.
Yeah, no, I'm on the writing team for the Larry Boy Veggie Tales movie that
Yes.
is on track to be out in a couple years, but we're just at the very beginning of that. And so, if you're familiar with Larry the Cucumber and his superhero persona,
Yeah.
that's what we're doing a movie about: is his superhero adventures as Larry Boy. So,
That's fantastic. And I
yeah.
think like the opportunities that probably we would have had when it came to like art and just putting your art out there was not available to us, whereas the generation now, they have much more opportunities. It would be great to sort of see how, that fits in, if you have any coaching opportunities through your platform, or if there's anything that you can tell us about for the youth. That would be exciting.
Yeah, yeah. If we're starting there, my thing that I usually would tell, especially young people, is all about uh, for me, my story is very different than everyone else's story. Everyone else's story is very different as far as like how they had the opportunities that they had. A lot of my opportunities came because I was in the right place at the right time, but I was also ready for it. There's a lot of things that happened in my development as a creator and as a creative, writing the comic books, writing this movie, even writing just a lot of the things that I've done. It came because there was a divine appointment that God orchestrated, and you can see like the little strings being pulled here and there to kind of put me in a place. And but then also I was ready for it. It wasn't like God, brought me to a place where, but all of a sudden it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. It was all things that he was leading me to. Um, I have a kind of long story. I'll try and keep it short, but this kind of gets into that a little bit. And it's just the way that God moved in my wife and my life early on when we were first married without any children. Now we're talking a long time ago. I have 5 kids, and
Mhm.
four of them. One of them just graduated college, and one of them still in middle school. So there's a broad range in between there. But that goes way back before we had children, and I really felt like God was leading me to do a program in Los Angeles that was all about getting into Hollywood. It was a Christian program. It was put on it was called Act One, Writing for Hollywood, and it was put on by the First Presbyterian Church of Hollywood, I think it was, and it was just Christian writers coming and learning about the industry, learning about how to write, learning about how to navigate, the studio systems and all these different things. And I really felt like God wanted me to go there. And I kind of was looking at it and thinking, well, this is probably my mission field. I feel like that might be what I'm being led toward here. In the meantime, my wife was also kind of feeling like that's what we needed to do. Like I should go to do this 5 week program, take 5 weeks off from work, so I'm not getting paid. I'm actually paying money to go and do stuff. Um, and she was also feeling like this is something that God wants us to do, both of us didn't want to talk with each other about it because I was afraid if I said something, she would be feeling like, no, I can't leave home. I can't leave the place that she grew up, which we still live in Indiana. So it's still where she grew up. But, and she felt like she didn't want to say anything to me because she didn't want to leave the place that she had grown up. And then finally, we had agreed that I should go, but we finally kind of had to sit down and both were saying, this is something that God is preparing us for. This might be our next step is to go into this mission field to Los Angeles and be a part of the Hollywood world. I went and did the program, and the last week of the program was 5 weeks long. I just had a feeling like this is not where God is calling me to. And I felt weird because like I felt it so strongly, like I'm supposed to come here. I'm supposed to do this. And when I came back home, I didn't want to say anything to my wife about that because she had felt God's leading. And this is another thing I'll just throw out there. Like if your spouse is feeling God, you need to listen to that. And that's something for me in my life. If God's nudging my wife, I better pay close attention because
Truly.
he's speaking, and that's one of the things God uses to speak to us is other people, but especially spouses, especially if they're following him. Um, so I didn't want to say anything to her because we were mentally prepared to leave. We were thinking, she was preparing herself to leave everyone she knew, all of her friends, family, all of that. And she was also feeling the same way, but she didn't want to say anything to me because it was my dream to go to Hollywood and to write movies and things like that. And we finally sat down and actually finally spoke to each other about this, which is, there's a lesson there too. Communication is, key. But, and we were both kind of just left at a loss. Like, why did we feel so strongly that I should go and do this thing? She was preparing to leave. She was ready to leave her friends and family and her support system. And it was just this, why all of a sudden to just have God almost change his mind, it felt like. What ended up happening though was for my wife who was preparing to leave, her friends and family left. And so her best friend moved to Canada. Her brother moved to Canada. Her other brother moved to Africa. Her sister moved to Canada. I mean, it was just like this. It wasn't quite everyone in our circle, but a lot of her support system was just taken away. And she was already, in some ways, leaning into God, preparing for that. And then for me, what happened was not too long after that, I got in contact with an artist who was a fantastic comic book artist, and he said, "Hey, I'm looking for some collaborators. Would you like to try out?" I said yes, and so I sent some samples. But all the things I had learned from that Hollywood experience, I was able to use, and it turned into a career in comic books.
Wow.
And so, and that career in comic books, went beyond just Indiana. It went beyond. I worked with it was a long route, but it led to working with Kingstone Comics in Florida. And that was, I was able to work on the book of Job, a comic book about Job, a comic book about where the Bible came from, a comic book about all four Gospels in chronological order. So you could see the story of Christ from birth to resurrection and ascension.
Wow.
And those comics were translated into other languages and just going to other places. I don't even know all the places that those comic books have gone to, but they're proclaiming God's word. And so, whereas I was looking at this kind of, okay, we're Los Angeles, it'll be our mission field. And it kind of turned into, okay, Indiana is our mission field, but I was able to do things I would have never been able to do if I was, a struggling writer trying to, make a big break in Los Angeles. And so, my kids ask me if I'm famous, and I tell them, well, I was a medium-sized fish in a very small pond. So if you know somebody who reads Christian comics, they might have heard my name. It's likely they've come across my name, but I wouldn't say I'm famous. But to be able to say the life of Christ has been translated into Farsi and has been translated into these other languages and just gone across the globe because of the ministry that Kingstone did, and even meeting the guy who runs Kingstone, that was another divine appointment. And when that happened, I was ready to jump in and And so that's where, right time, right place, and ready is something I throw out there. There's another thing. I don't have an R word that goes with it, but that is, God's leading, and just following God's leading, and um, you know, just being ready for what He is ready for you to do. Because He's not. They say, He's not going to have you do anything He's not prepared you for, and that's somewhat true. But also, He might have you do some things that you're not prepared for, but He's going to work with you. He's by your side when you're thrown in those situations you're not ready for. He's still by your side. But
Most definitely.
yeah.
The
But that
word
would
of
be
God
the
says,
my advice to creators who are trying to figure out creatively, what do I do? How do I, um, get my work out there, or step into some of these places that I, dream about, and that kind of thing. So, yeah.
definitely. Well, that is exciting. I am amazed to hear that. I really, really want to hear a little bit more about where we can find some of those comics. We'll probably leave that information in the show notes for your guests, where they can find you. But I think what's very important is to remember what scripture says. God is the author and the perfecter of our faith. He's the finisher of our faith. And so he perfects that which concerns us. So really is we're not perfect. Everything won't be perfect, but he will perfect that which concerns us. And I'm glad to know that you and your wife were confident enough, but also trusting enough to have that conversation, and really come together and communicate how God is working or speaking in both of your lives. It's beautiful to see how couples will, really be used by God. And she was kind enough to sort of step back and allow God to really work in your life. And you were also able to just hear what she had to say. So I'm really, really glad to hear that. That is a beautiful story. Um, and I think it would be important to know for our guests where to find your comic, as well as when is the launch of the Veggie Tales
I I don't have a
program.
date yet on the movie. We're doing early work on that right now, and so there's a lot of details that still need to be figured out. And I can't really talk too much about a lot of that just because I'm not privy to that, and what I am privy to, I'm not really allowed to talk about much. But I can't say much more than I know Larry will be in it. Like that's what I know, and that's what I can say. But as far as like finding my work online, benavery.com is my primary website where I put a lot of my books and works on there. But you can find it at christianbook.com. There's some of my stuff there, and Amazon. But the other place that I really highly recommend, especially to your audience, would be Kingstone Comics, and looking up Kingstone Comics and finding their website, because that is the place where you can buy not just my work,
Yeah.
with the Christ, and with Job and Noah and Esther and Book of God, all those things. But they did a few volumes where it goes through from Genesis to Revelation, and I did part of that, but there's a lot of people who are involved in that, and so there's if you buy them in paperback, there's six volumes, and if you buy it in hardcover, it's only three. But they are bricks. They are very heavy, big books. Um, and they also have a series for it's actually United States history, and they have another series that's apologetics, and kind of it's called 101 Questions About the Bible, and it
Mhm.
gets into a lot of different things like that. So I highly recommend checking out that website. You can find some of my work there. There's also a couple devotion books that I did for them, and yeah, so those are the places I would say I would
To
recommend
find
going to. Yeah,
Keystone Comics.
yeah.
Fantastic. Well, this is awesome. Thank you so much, Ben, for accommodating meeting with her father's business. We're totally new to this scene, to sort of working through, but excited to see how the Lord will use us. Just basically, one step at a time. Yes.
Yeah.
So, but I did ask a little bit about if you have any coaching programs or opportunities in the future for young comics, or young storytellers, or artists that are interested in the comic world. If you have any courses or anything of that sort
I don't
coming
have any
up
courses.
in
No,
the
no.
future. that
I
you
do have a YouTube channel. It's called Strangers and Aliens. It's also tied into my podcast. I do a couple different podcasts, but Strangers and Aliens is my podcast about science fiction and fantasy and Christianity and faith. Um, and on my YouTube channel, I do have a couple YouTube videos about storytelling. And so there's one that's it's what we can learn about storytelling from Star Wars, the Muppets, and Stan Lee and Marvel Comics. So it's Muppets, Marvel, and something I can't remember the exact title right now, but it's a session that I did at a children's ministry conference. But it's all about just telling stories and how to um, verbally tell stories, but then also there's a lot of application towards any kind of writing you might be doing and that kind of thing. So
Hmm.
yeah, so you can
Well,
look at strangersandaliens.com and kind of look through. I have some book reviews and some other conversational things there, but it's about an hour long video where it's just me kind of talking about what I love, stories, yeah, and Jesus,
and
you
you're
know.
good at, and you're
So
definitely good at. It's great that you get what you love and what you're good at combined,
yeah,
and let the
yeah,
Lord use you. So we're so pleased to have you. Thank you again for joining us on Her Father's Business podcast.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you too.